And guess what? I'm doing an interview. Yes, this is my first time ever, you guys, that I'm doing an interview. And for my first choice ever, I'm going to introduce a mighty Gibborim. This is Erik, y'all.
Hey, how's it going?
I am stoked because you know what? Erik and I are going to we're going to wrestle with, okay? Mm-hmm. Caveat. We're going to wrestle with some questions that people in the super woke families of truthers out there have seemingly never answered. Erik asked me a question a few months ago. We started chatting over the phone. First of all, I got to say this. Erik came onto my radar because I saw he made a knife.
Mm-hmm. A couple.
let me just say that again. He made a knife. If you've never made a knife, you have no idea why that's so awesome and spectacular. And second reason why. Because this dude's sword also looks like that. Yeah, it's heavy. I'm almost exhausted holding this. And yet, it's well worn.
It's pretty big.
But today we're also going to be talking about these kinds of swords, guys. Because we're going to be wrestling with the question of basically whether or not should we, as followers of Yahweh and of His covenant, as guardians of His covenant, should we be training in the arts of death? Erik's the guy I chose because I want him to help us learn and wrestle with these same questions about studying the art of killing, studying the arts of self-defense, and how we as followers of the Messiah should pursue or not abstain. Should we abstain from these? So, Erik, if you would, man, would you just tell us a little bit about your story of coming into the whole world of martial arts? And will you go ahead and tell us a little bit of your story about that?
Sure, yeah. So it's kind of all-encompassing because it also ties in with our family kind of coming into the full truth of the Scriptures. So it's all around the same time frame. But when I was 13, we were going to mainstream Christian church and big Calvary church where we are. And it was like, at least 1,000+ membership. And it's this huge church with all these different corridors and all these different, activities with, soccer, basketball, whatever. You can just plug into anything. I couldn't plug into anything. There was nothing. It's not that I wasn't athletic. I just never had an inclination to go and, do regular mainstream sports. I felt like, what's the point? Where's the actual, gain, I guess, for me in that, that's just kind of where my personality, I just couldn't, just have fun getting competitive in that respect. Because everyone else was just better than me. I always felt like I was, trying to pick up the pace and pick up, their slack, or they're picking up my slack. But so I just couldn't fit in. And I'm at that awkward age where you've got belly fat and you're like, oh, I want to get fit, but I can't do sports. So what do I do? So my parents, they were looking and trying to find something for me, and lo and behold, we were in one of their church services one day, and on their big screens, they've got all these ads that just go across the screen, like trying to sell you stuff almost right before they start giving you the message. And they had this ad popped up for their karate classes that they host in the church, and they were like, oh, this could be good for Erik. And so they posed the question to me, and I'm like, well, this could be kind of good, this could be fun. Of course, me being the middle child and my brother being older and stronger, and he's into weightlifting, and he could just knock me over with a push. I thought, wow, I could actually hold my ground if I learned how to kick.
You could beat up
punch.
your brother.
Yeah, I could beat up my brother. I'll be honest. That's one of the first things that went through my brain. Yeah. And I was like, wow, that could be kind of cool. And I will
sound like Jacob.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah.
The heel grabber.
A little bit. And I will be honest, I did intimidate him a little bit when I started doing it, so I kind of gained that. But we'll get into that. So I did my first class and immediately fell in love. Our instructor, he obviously was very different than your traditional Hollywood karate instructor because he's not there just to promote you, just get paid. He was the kind of guy that would work all day long. Truly admire him. He would work 3 jobs. One of them, he was a volunteer police officer. So he was that in order just to be able to have on the scene practice for the things that he taught us. So he had felt a huge responsibility for what he was teaching, that he wanted to actually be able to have some experience with what he was doing. He grew up in a very traditional dojo that they trained with knives, they trained with real guns. He'd always have stories of them doing rolls over their instructor, holding a knife, and they had a fully stropped knife, and they just had to roll over, and if they didn't, they got their gi a little bloody. They trained with real firearms with blanks in them, but if it went off, they'd be able to tell that they got shot because it'd be all over their white gi. And then they'd also get in trouble for that because now they got their gi dirty. So
first of all, do you want to tell people what a dojo is?
Yeah, that's
and a gi.
Yeah. Okay. So for those of you that don't know, a dojo, in Japanese, a dojo is that there's many layers to it. It's basically a training center. That's what we're sold as Americans, as a training center. In reality, though, a dojo is a place of worship. And now a lot of people are going to disagree with that, and that's fine. I disagreed with it for a long time. But as you do research and you understand culture, and culture is very important, and we'll get into that because it also goes back to Scripture. Scripture talks a lot about everything that you do in the martial arts from a different perspective. But a dojo was a place of worship. And in dojos, there will always be shrines. Now, not necessarily idols, but shrines. And that's just a common thing in Japan. It's a common thing to have shrines, like Shinto shrines. You'd see that kind of anywhere. It's kind of just in their, their buildings and stuff. It's a normal thing in the culture to have, shrines. When you enter into a dojo, you first have to do 2 things. You have to bow to show respect to the dojo. Well, there's some scriptural problems with that, and I had to wrestle with that, and I'll get into that later, but you have to bow, and you have to take your shoes off. Now, there's 2 major things about that. Again, we'll get into that in a little bit, but so dojo, think of it mainly as like this is where you practice karate, but it's also a place of religious iconography and worship and mindset. And then a gi is very interesting. I didn't learn that. I learned this while I was in the martial arts. A gi is a robe that they traditionally would wear all in the Japanese warrior type culture. It was something that the men would, and women even, would just wear on a daily basis. But especially when you were training for combat, a gi was a burial garment. It was so that when they were in combat, they were ready to be buried if they died. And death in that culture is an honorable thing if you died in combat, for your side, with your sword and all that. It's very, very interesting culture, but that gi was representative of you were ready to die at any moment. And people aren't told that when they come in. They're told that they're going to learn honor, dignity, respect when they walk in to learn a karate class or kung fu or whatever. They're going to learn how to respect your elders and how to hold your own and how to be a man. And well, there's a lot of subtleties that they're not teaching you outright, and there's reasons for that. So, do you mind if I just
please, man?
Going? Okay.
The reason, just first of all, for you guys that didn't know, Erik has a background that's totally juxtaposed to mine, and what was so awesome is because Erik went from kind of normalish American Christian society. Let's just, is that okay to say it that
totally
way?
True.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like middle America, karate and Christian classes.
Yeah.
Like just Like, it's an advertisement on the screen that we see in churches, like a good way for the Christian to hang out and still do awesome things, and it's a good activity. That's how it's kind of marketed and sold to all of us. I obviously had a totally different background when it came to the arts of self-defense, because I was taught more the art of killing immediately. And Erik, without knowing it, and his parents maybe without knowing it too, got him connected to the art of killing immediately as well.
Yeah, unknowingly, but yes.
Right. And so, and the reason we got to talk about this is because it's a huge void in the believer community that there's a lot of people that don't even have an idea of what most of the sports that we're participating in have. And Erik has opened my eyes and helped me to connect so many of these dots to what has been, for me, a totally different world. Yeah. This is the industrialized, commercialized version of the art of killing that is wholesale marketed to people all over. And so I wanted Erik to be able to come on and share with you guys his testimony of learning and coming to understand a lot of these things, and that you guys can start to wrestle with these things as well.
And take it into context with what the scriptures talk about with these things. Because, I have to be honest, when I do mention this side of my testimony, it's met with a lot of confrontation, especially from believers, because I've had a lot of people come to me and say, "No, I will never give up my martial arts. I've practiced it all my life. It's been very helpful to me. There's no way I could part with it." And this talk is not to cause you to ditch it. This is what we're going to wrestle with. Yeah. We're wrestling with this, but for you to truly question what you're doing, because not only are we talking about a culture of death that is represented through the entire scope of the martial arts, because that's what it is. It's the art of war. That's what that means. You can't get around that. That's what it's for. Yeah. It's to kill someone. But also to understand the spiritual ramifications of what you are doing, because we'll even get this, when we start looking at some scripture a little bit, that you can't separate the physical from the spiritual. And I know there's a lot of people out there that have a hard time with that, but it's the truth. And the Father created us as spiritual beings, and everything that He represents in the physical helps us see Him in the spiritual. So, and it's not meant to sound New Agey or anything. The New Age is taking everything and twisted it. That's what Satan does. He cannot create anything better than what Yah has already made. So all he does is distort. So that's what we see him do. We see that now with our culture. We see that now with the society we're living in right now. Yeah. He's, messing with the image. So that is what we're up against when we talk about these things. It's not to say you're a bad, horrible person for doing it, because guess what? We've done it. We've been there. This is a thing that we still wrestle with and struggle with, because it's something that we've trained in, and so many of you are still training in it. And just to think about stopping training for more than a week, that I already know that your bones are aching, because mine were. My legs, oh my gosh, it was. We were just talking about this before we started. It's like detox. It's like a detox that you go through when you stop. But
before we go there, why don't you tell them what the training was that you started getting into? So what did that look like for you guys?
So when I trained, he was also a fitness instructor. So we were his concept of training was all to be completely combat ready. So it was karate, but he also was like a Bruce Lee in the sense that he took from every kind of art and tried to learn the mindsets of every single art to learn how to overcome them. There was traditional in the sense we practiced kata forms, we practiced techniques and formal stances and all that kind of stuff, but also with the mindset of how can we do it better than how it's been taught. So he was all about finishing the fight within less than 2 seconds. And if that meant killing the person, that meant killing the person. Now, it wasn't the intent to just go ahead and, being a murder, because him being also in law enforcement understood the law. And he would even tell us, don't register as a black belt. Because if you were to register as a black belt and you were to get in a fight,
it's admissible.
Yeah, you have to tell the person that you fight, I am a lethal weapon. And if you don't, the law says that you can go to jail. because you didn't inform them. Even though they're trying to attack you, they have the right. If they survive the fight, they have the right to sue you. So, again, this is the world that we're living in. So, but we were taught to end the fight in less than 2 seconds. So we were taught a lot of close quarter. Some, further out because we were also trained in, Taekwondo kind of techniques. We were also trained in grappling. And so the gamut was just kind of all over the place. Like I mentioned earlier, how the gi is your death garment, basically. That was the mindset that we were, trained to have. That you are here to not only defend yourself, but to defend others. And to give your all. He would, no joke, every single class, always be drilling into us that even if you get shot in the heart, you still have 20 seconds that you can pump out in order to end the other life or to stop the fight or whatever. It doesn't mean that you're out. Like, you can survive. Adrenaline is an amazing thing. You can keep pumping. I know you've done a lot of research about superhumans and how through crazy, intense situations, you can do almost virtually anything. Absolutely. Your body can make you do it. It's an amazing thing that the Father has given us. But that's kind of the mindset. He said he would always be about never giving up. So we would always be training for at least an hour, working out in class before we would actually start doing any technique. Now, we would practice technique in the middle of class as well, of working out, but he was all about the physical fitness, being actually prepared. And he would always talk about he couldn't stand seeing other quote unquote masters or whatever with a belly, and how they're just watching everyone else while instructing and not actually doing it. He was never about that. He was always about getting there with you. And I trained a lot with him. I not to brag or anything, but I was good. I was good, and I was selected a lot by him. And he wanted me to inherit what he had. And I wanted it. I wanted it really bad. So I worked, and I worked hard for it. And obviously school and stuff got in the way, but I tried really hard. I got all the way up to a brown black belt, as the Father started, revealing things to me. And that's the point that I got up to. Now, our system was a little different than others, obviously belt systems, and then that's a whole nother thing. The belt systems, we also want to just make it look like a American commercialized thing, but you can even do research and go back and see that the belt systems go back to a Hindu and Eastern mysticism kind of concept. It's crazy, but that's even the case that we're met up against. So we were taught with weapons, we were taught with knives, we were taught with batons, we were taught with staffs, canes. We had all different kinds of instructors that would come in and teach. We were taught applicable application, especially in our tests. And our tests would be very intense. You'd be working out in the middle of your test. You'd be they'd tell you to do your kata forms over and over and over and over and over and over again. Even if you're doing them perfectly, they would stress your brain out intensely right at the very beginning, just to see what your limits were, so that they could see, okay, is he really worthy for the belt or not? Is he really worthy to be able to to advance, to excel? One thing that we were taught is that you are not truly a student until you are a black belt. The student rank, in a sense, is earned when you receive your black belt. And that means that you have given full commitment to the art, to learning the practice. And that's a really big thing. That shows a whole nother level of focus, dedication, and mindset that isn't in the colored belts. That isn't in the people just coming and trying to see if this will work out, or advancing slowly but not really getting there. those who became black belts in this system were people that were dedicated to becoming a black belt. They're dedicated to becoming a student under the master. And he didn't like being called that. He wouldn't allow people to call him that. He was a very humble guy. But needless to say, he understood the art, and he knew somebody who understood it, and he wanted to mentor them. I was that kind of person that could see a technique and almost do it just right after watching it. I'm very much a visual learner. But it was amazing. And I think that it's something that the Father gave me, but we're going to have to see how that goes, how that blends in the future. But I understood body mechanics really well. And I could, there was a point in my training that, and he noticed this in me, that as I began to excel, I'd be able to watch a technique and then teach somebody the technique after watching it. They'd be like, I just can't stand it. I just don't understand it. And I'm like, it's easy. It's just this. And I'd be able to manipulate their body to show them how to do it and help them feel it. And he'd be able to be like, that's a skill that not many people have at such an early stage, or even in general. A lot of black belts still are not good teachers, but are still good students. There's a difference. Being a teacher and being a student is a very different concept. Yeah. Again, I wasn't perfect, but I had the mindset of becoming perfect. I wanted to have my own dojo, have my own everything. This be my career. So, well, I guess, I mean, should we just get
Something's getting on to you.
Yeah.
So, Erik, I started doing a series, guys, I don't know, about 6 months ago that was called The Way of the Blade.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I'd ever really turned a camera on and just talked. And of course I talked about knives.
One of the best subjects ever.
Awesome. You could basically talk about knives forever, guys. I never even got close to scratching the itch on that. And every other person, there's a lot of people out there who just don't get that at all. And that's totally okay. But there's a lot of other people that are like, oh yeah, I've been holding a knife the whole time you guys have been talking, actually.
I've been sharpening a knife.
I've been sharpening a knife. I've been making a knife, right? I know you guys are out there, and I love you. And ladies, it's awesome too. Listen, there's this whole other side of expressive, artistic passion that can come through tools, right? And
that's a tool.
That's why I say this, guys, because it's a different language set. Because I use this to chop little pieces of bamboo so I can hold up laundry lines to hang my linen on.
Right.
That's what I predominantly use this for. Now, I'll be honest, this is also basically one of the most effective killing tools ever made. And for a long time, a lot of humans have died because of this tool, right? Same thing when it comes to bigger knives, bigger swords. People have been finding ways, the mechanics, like he's talking about, the mechanisms of building a system to how to destroy another human being. The roots of this go all the way back at the we're going to get to that because we have to. I want you to be able to share your desire to study, where the convictions came into, how that process began, what's the foundation of the art of death, right? And for me, my initiation into this came through masters, like he's referring to, guys. There's different classes of systems in almost like a hierarchy, a physical hierarchy. We contend that there's always a spiritual hierarchy behind that as well, that they're interchangeable, they can never be separated, that the foundations at the roots of that tree will only ever bear that kind of fruit. And there's certain identifying characteristics in the fruit of death's camp. Like death is an entity. That's why I'm trying to say that. So you guys, you get a concept that the spiritual prince of this kingdom we're talking about, by and far, is death. There's death. Yeah. Go ahead. I know I'm pricking some things in your head.
Yeah. Well, okay. So when I started getting convicted about the things I was doing, it wasn't necessarily. Now I'm also not necessarily like the kind of person that just want to go and hurt somebody. I'm more of a tender-hearted kind of guy. So whenever we would train these things. I train with all my might, but I go home and think, would I really want to kill someone? Would I really want to do that? But when I also train with, people who fought in combat, who were told to stop killing, because they were killing too many.
Get addicted.
They get addicted to it and they get bloodthirsty.
Yeah.
I'll never forget in one of my tests, I was going up against a Marine. Man, he's just an awesome combatant. But man, he, I don't know, you know this, he would get these shark eyes when he would go.
Say that again?
He would get shark eyes.
Shark eyes.
Yeah. His eyes would almost go black. And it was like another personality came out. And he went into kill mode, basically. Yeah. And it would always happen when you would hit his head. We never did that. I did that, and it was the dumbest decision I made.
During your test?
Oh yeah. He was still in his shark eye mode, very generous with me because he immediately just went full out brawl and started, pounding my face in and all the way up into a wall, and I was like, pudding at that point and just bloody all down my nose. Had to go back in, and they go fight, and then bam, it happened again, and they finally had to like pull him off of me, and it was so that's the kind of people I train. And then again, also we trained in a church, so we could not do everything they wanted to. So
Why not?
Because of the church and their regulations, and we couldn't actually bring in real weapons, so we had to train with wooden batons and wooden knives, and so they would, if they had it their way, they would train with real knives and with real guns, and we would still bring in real swords and stuff like that. But and also we had parents that weren't about the mindset they were, who had little itty bitty kids that would come in and watch, so they couldn't do things normally. Back in the day, parents weren't allowed in to the dojo. It was just the students and the teacher. Nowadays there are lawsuits with that, so
probably some of those for good reason.
Yeah. There's a whole other side of people that aren't revealed. So but that wasn't really what was convicting me about the martial arts. I was understanding of that whole concept of having to kill someone. What was convicting me were the back brain things that you just do for muscle memory. We in 2016 attended a virtual conference called Prophecy Watchers. Now, I don't recommend them today. Very dispensational, but they were huge in our development coming into the truth, which was amazing. But we attended a conference. They were in Oklahoma. So many speakers there. Well, the man who convicted me about what I'm about to get into, I can't remember his name, so don't ask me about him. But he was talking about the influx and the installment of yoga into the Christian churches. And I was like, oh, wow, that sounds so interesting. And throughout the whole talk, I was in with everything that he was saying. I was like, yes, totally makes sense. Never do yoga. I didn't do yoga. So I thought. And then he talked about how when in yoga they teach you to bow, and I was like, immediately it was like my stomach dropped, and I thought, wow. Everything else just went quiet, and I was like, every time I go into the dojo, I bow. Every time I stand before my partner and we begin, I have to bow. Every time I come up to my instructor, when he calls me up, I have to bow. Whenever I do any codiforms, I have to bow. And I would be reminded, the Father reminded me of scriptures where it talks about how we're to bow to no man, even to an angel. And I was like, wow. So I would go into class, and immediately I would start, I would bow in and start immediately thinking, oh my gosh, no, I'm not. What I'm doing is not a pagan thing. No, I'm not. That's not what I'm doing. That's not what I'm thinking. That's not the intent of my heart. Yeah. All right. So those are the thoughts that always go through my head. I would second guess almost everything I would do at that point. And that led me into 9 months of research, of trying to disprove all of the things I was thinking I was doing that was pagan, and say, no, they're not. They're just, tradition. But even that, what is tradition? What do we call tradition?
Yeah.
What do you do still as a Christian, as tradition? Christmas and Easter, Halloween, even Valentine's Day, Groundhog's Day, even our federal holidays like Memorial's Day and Veterans Day. And, these are things, these are considered traditions. But when you look at the deeper roots behind your simple traditions that you do, putting Christmas presents underneath the tree, hunting for little Easter eggs, dressing up for Halloween. Okay, now Halloween, that's kind of an obvious.
Yeah.
It should be.
Bowing before your Christmas tree to get your presents.
Yeah. Talks in Jeremiah how they make idols onto their trees. Yeah, Jeremiah 10. They make idols under their trees that they deck with silver and gold, that they cut down. It's what the Christian church does. It's what the Christian church does. So I had to study a lot what tradition really, came to when it came to the martial arts. And my studies were... Okay, now here's the amazing part. We already were taught things like this. That just went right over my head in class. But I was already taught these things. Like... In class, I was taught that my art originated from China first, then to Korea, then to Japan, then to the U.S. We were drilled that almost every single test we had, that we had to make sure that we knew where our art came from. Mm-hmm. And that's very important when you understand the whole grand scheme of things. All of my studies for karate came back to China, but not even to China, but to India. Mm-hmm. And I know even in the martial arts world, there's a lot of debate even with this. But the general consensus is that it started with a man by the name of Bodhidharma. Now, martial arts were around before Bodhidharma. Obviously, there was war before Bodhidharma. It goes all the way back to Gadriel and what it says in Enoch, how he taught men how to make weapons and how to
take iron from the earth and make weapons for war.
Exactly,
right? Metals from the earth.
Now,
and further back to Cain.
Oh yeah,
He was the first one who struck down his brother.
Yeah. Cain was the one who virtually, started it all. And the mark of Cain. You talk about the mark of Cain a lot in your videos, and that's a very serious topic. I knew a lot of people in that room. Well, at least one in particular that definitely had the mark of Cain on him. Mm-hmm. And he knew it too. He had that guilt and that weight on him all the time. And he was the nicest guy you could ever meet. But he knew what he was capable of. And he knew what he's done. But going back to Bodhidharma, if you do any research about him, he came from India. He was what they call a Buddhist monk. And he came to a Shaolin temple in China as he was visiting. Now, there's a whole story about it where he came to the king and had this whole philosophical debate with him. That's kind of not really important. What's really important is when he came to the Shaolin temple, and you notice how the monks. Now, he noticed how the monks were very weak and decrepit, and that they spent so much of their time meditating and like fasting or whatever, that they never had actually any physical buffeting to keep them strong, to keep their minds sharp, so they can continue to do their writing their scrolls and all that. So this is where the legend of Bodhidharma comes in, where he went into a cave and he meditated for, I think, 7 years with his eyes open. And that's also why Buddhists drink green tea, because Bodhidharma drank green tea in order to keep his eyelids from shutting. Now, I'm not saying green tea is bad, but again, you have to understand why you do the things you do. So as he was meditating, he was given these downloads of I think it's the 12 fists of Kung Fu. and he taught them to the Shaolin monks. Now, this is where we get all the animal styles of fighting, which, if you study martial arts at all, the modern martial arts that we have today, they all come from this form of of kung fu, all karate, all jiu-jitsu, all judo, grappling, any kicking, punching, any kind of art that you see today, especially any art that you wear a belt for, even what's that Jewish martial art?
Krav Maga.
Krav Maga. Now, we're gonna also get into that. Krav Maga is a cop out that people use when they study these things. Oh, well, let's just go into Krav Maga because Krav Maga is Jewish.
It's just self-defense.
So it's just self-defense, even though
snapping guys' arms for certain.
Yeah. So, and again, I'm not judging anybody who does these things. I'm giving you knowledge to study out yourselves to test these things. Yeah, I took 9 months. Remember, 9 months while doing it, and contemplating every single class I went to struggle and wrestle with Yah with these things in order to come to a conclusion to better my relationship with Him and with my family and with the people around me and my confidence and everything. You think martial arts gives you confidence? No, I'm here to tell you it doesn't. If your confidence is in your own ability to defend your life, then what happens when that's stripped from you? What happens when you're put in the corner and your arms are broken and your legs are broken, or you don't have the weapon to protect you? Where does your confidence lie? And that's where and then a lot of people also say, who are believers and who practice martial arts, okay, well then I'll call upon the Father to do this. What if you called upon Him first?
Yeah.
What if you were prepared to go into it, not like, okay, what if He pulls the knife? What if you came into it? How can I bless them? How can I actually cause them to be fruitful and multiply? How can I actually cause them to be redeemed instead of cause them to be, because you have their life in your hands at that point. And if you know where they're going in the end, you are in a sense deciding their fate. And we know who the one who decides fates is. Are we to get in His place? That's what we're going to be struggling with here in this talk. But anyways, if you do any kind of study with Bodhidharma, you will see that the style that he taught from was directly from yoga. That the movements and the motions and obviously the bows is a kind of an obvious. Even when you look at Taoism or was like there's Jainism, there's was like Shintoism or something in Japan. They all come from this Buddhist kind of understanding, which even goes back to Hinduism. Buddhism came from Hinduism. Now there's a huge when you study these things out, it's not just to study the enemy and to learn about their Elohim, their gods, and the things that they did. It's not just this isn't just study. This is to understand strategically how to combat these things.
That's right.
This knowledge is to better yourself for the kingdom, so that you can know what entity you're dealing with, what demons somebody has in them, so that you are better equipped for the spiritual fight, because it says we're not to wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers and rulers of the darkness of this present age. That's what we're up against. We always want to think, this person's doing something wrong. Well, no, what's controlling them? And think, how can you free them from that? Because they're the victim. We're the victims in this when we submit ourselves to the enemy into, any facet of life. Whether it's at your job, whether it's with your family, whatever. When you submit yourself to the enemy, you are his battery. Michael Lake talks about it like that, how you are a battery, either for the kingdom of heaven or for the kingdom of darkness. Either way, you're getting charged for one or the other. And it's your decision to decide who you're getting charged for. And it's very important that you understand that nobody on this earth is just a good person or a bad person or somebody in between. You're either for one kingdom or for another. You're either a pawn for one or a warrior for another. And we see pawns for the kingdom of heaven and pawns for the kingdom of darkness. We see warriors for the kingdom of heaven and warriors for the kingdom of darkness. And it's very important. We need a lot more warriors to be able to free the pawns of the kingdom of darkness, because the kingdom of darkness is really good at making warriors.
Yeah, they are.
And using pawns to supply their warriors. But they're really good. We're not really good at making warriors. We've been really stripped with that. And through the things that Nathan's teaching, and learning himself, and through what, from this stuff in the background, I don't think we'll get into that tonight, but if we do, it'll be interesting. Learning your roots, just like learning the roots of things, of culture, of things of the enemy, is very important to get back to where things came from, where you came from. We all came from a garden. There's very important aspects with that. He could talk a lot about that. I could talk a lot about that. But we have to understand origins of things so that we can understand better if we should or shouldn't be doing them. So what I was learning was that especially my kata forms were sun god worship, because we would do things in a circular pattern, in a circular motion. Now, I know there will be people that say, okay, well, the kata forms were made, especially during like World War II and World War I, when Japan was getting, oppressed, and they were suspending the martial arts. That they had to hide the martial arts and dance, so they used the kata forms in order to continue to practice their techniques, to hide that they were practicing techniques, and just looked like they were doing, dance in front of everybody. But if you go back, kata means form. And so we just call it kata now as this is when you're just doing your stationary movements, where you're you're kicking there and all that, and but this is something that was foundational to the martial arts. I'm going to say after the rise of Bodhidharma. And that's very important to understand. Bodhidharma is a huge, whether he was real or not, the spirit behind him is. And it's still prevalent today. His influence, or its influence, to the realm of fighting has influenced it for the kingdom of darkness in such a way that you practicing these arts is almost, I'm going to say, near to impossible without it being worshipped to the sun or to another deity. Yoga means to yoke. If you study yoga, every single pose that you do in yoga is a bow to one of their 30 million gods Elohim that they have out there. I'll use Elohim because Elohim is the Hebrew for what we translate as God. It's not necessarily the correct translation. God is not necessarily a correct translation, because God is also another Canaanite deity in the Old Testament that we have, that the Hebrew Israelites actually worshipped as a deity of good luck and fortune, and of money and wealth. So when you read on your dollar bill, "In God we trust," it should make you think a little bit. So I'm going to use Elohim because that's the actual correct identifier of these entities. There are many Elohim out there.
That's right.
There's not just the one true Elohim that we read about in the scriptures. But he also made other principalities and powers. That he gave authority over the nations.
Pantheon.
It says that he made counsel when he made creation. Now, obviously, he didn't need to, but he chose to, and that's a very important thing. He created you and I to have counsel with him. That's a huge thing, and the enemy always wants us to yoke with him, to have counsel with him instead, because he sees the power that could be within us, and he wants to destroy it. He was a murderer from the beginning, it says in the scriptures. And we need to understand that. We need to understand that what he wants to teach us will destroy us. But what the Father wants to teach us will actually give life, not only to us, but of those that we come in contact with.
That's right.
And that's huge. We're supposed to be exuding life. And people are supposed to come by our shadow and be healed.
Yeah.
That happened. We want that to happen again.
Instead of coming by our shadow and being possessed with death.
Or of fear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people
fearing
are
our shadow.
afraid. We don't want people to be afraid of anything but Him, so that we can come to the full understanding of who He is and submit to Him in the fear of Yah. To truly understand how to love Him, we have to understand that He is the Almighty Creator that could snap you out in a moment with just a single word. But that He gives you even today, even though you screwed up yesterday, He gives you today to be able to try again, live for Him. It says that a righteous man falls 7 times. That means he gets up 7 times also and tries again. So just because you fall doesn't mean that you're not susceptible or able to get back up again. That's what we are called to do. David was called a man after Yah's own heart. David fell a lot. David had many shortcomings, and he's killed people because of his shortcomings.
Yeah, murdered them. Plotted
their death.
Yeah, conspired to commit murdery. Right? He hired a dagger man.
Yeah.
Right? He hired a murderer.
He had his best friend go in the front line so he could take his wife.
That's right.
And yet he was called a man after Yah's own heart. It's a very important concept to understand.
Moses, also, likewise, murderer.
Yeah.
Right? It's important to understand there's a lot of murderers in Scripture.
Yeah.
A lot of them. Saul, right? Murderer.
Yeah.
It's really important. Anointed king over Israel, Saul. Also.
Paul, even. And he thought what he was doing was righteous in Yah's eyes. And he said, if it was not for my ignorance, I would not have been redeemed.
One of the disciples that Yeshua called after him to follow him, right, was Simon the Zealot. Simon?
Yeah.
The Zealot. Yeah. The Zealot were the Hashashin. They were the assassins. This is where they were the daggermen who were out there believing that by guarding the Torah with absolute zealousness, they had the right to go and hunt down the people that were trying to make them submit to laws that caused them to transgress the Torah. So they believed they should take with violence back the kingdom. Right? And they were zealous, right? They're called zealots in the Scriptures. Those are assassins. Right? This is where my training, where I got trained in, was brought in. And when I traced my roots of what I was initiated into, the art of silent killing, right? If you go into Fairbairn, right? William Fairbairn. And but where does he get his training initiations from? The Empress of Japan's bodyguards, right? And so I didn't realize, but a lot of the muddying of my roots and the origins that I learned in the silent killing world came from the same lands, and then it traced the same roots back, right? And from India, but mine traced also back through Iberia, through Spain, and then over into the Mideast, right? Into Persia, and then to Babylon. And it's where the roots of all of what we keep seeing is there's these two fruits, there's these two kingdoms out there, right? The kingdom of heaven and the kingdom of darkness. And they're perpetually bearing out different fruit. Like you said, there's these pawns, these kings. There's these mighty men who are out there. I was so excited to read through my series and becoming a Gibborim about the Gibborim from the Scriptures because we are brainwashed on a perpetual basis from the day we are born to the day we die about the Gibborim of the world. And we are made to memorize them, to put their names on our lips, to be like, these are the lists of your gods, right? Why is it that you've studied Greek mythology for as long as you can remember? Every person in America, it's textbook required reading to study the other names of their gods, right? We have to know their stories. I had 2 years of studies at a public university on the other gods, right? In Greek and Roman, and I was required to study that. Why? Why is that? But not one of them asked me to study these gods, because this is full of gods too. Lots of Elohim. So many other Elohim in here.
And you'll see that they all come back to these that are mentioned in here. All the other pantheons that you see, they all stem back to these that we've seen here. They're just different icons of the same ones, continually reproduced over and over and over and over again.
But their fruit is always detectable. If you want to find out, where did this come from? Why do I do this? Why is it my children are forced to learn these things? Why is it my friends have to do these things? It's because this book, the Sword of the Covenant, will teach you where all of it comes from. And from starting with Cain, you should trace the lineage of the tree of death. From the tree of knowledge of good and evil came from Adam and his wife, Eve. But then his son, Cain, is the one who bore the mark of death, right? And it's really important to study that because I believe if you trace all the lineages, it is going to go down to one man who also rebelled. Sin was crouching at his door. Hasatan, the accuser, was standing there. The dragon was standing at Cain's door seeking an entrance, right? He did not put the shield up. He did not guard against it.
Oh, okay, explain what that is.
First of all, this is a buckler. Okay. Erik is my other Gibborim, y'all, who is going to help me make this out of Nara wood.
Hopefully.
Yes. He's going to give us the opportunity.
Yes.
Guys,
Yes.
I'm trying to recruit Erik out of a wood shop job that he has right now, and I want to make him a bladesmith and an armor bearer. We're working on that. Erik is going to help us do it. He's amazing with woods. He makes knives so he can make wood better. It's amazing.
Yeah.
He's all modest and shy. His spoons and woodcraft is spectacular. Anyways, we're going to take this. This, guys, this is like what should be. Sorry, I got to figure out how to do this. Then you just can't even see us at all. This is a buckler. I'm just going to stand up so you can see it. Okay, guys, this is a buckler. Now, if Erik, you got Psalm 91 maybe? Oh, yeah. Check this out. You know what? Erik's got a sharp sword. He's ready to go. So, guys, do you ever read the Bible? If you haven't, do it, because it talks about this stuff. And you know what? Most of us grow up our whole life not knowing what the heck a shield is or a buckler is.
Okay, sad. It's very sad. I thought a buckler, and many of you probably do too, that a buckler is something that you put on your belt. That is not something you put on your belt. Okay.
Well, in a different way.
In a different way.
What did you mean by buckler? What did you think?
I thought a buckler was just a big buckle that fits on your belt that holds up your pants.
He thought it was a buckle.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
just with an
buckler. Yeah, like the verb action of a buckle. Yeah, no, that's not what it is.
What the buckle does. But then I told Erik, I love bucklers, guys, because what a buckler is, it's like your EDs.
Yeah, explain this. This is very important when we get to the word.
So because everyone's like, you need the armor of Yahweh. Yes. Ephesians 6, guys.
What does that mean?
What is it? Like, we read these things, and then almost always, do you know what we're then shown? An image of a Roman soldier, which is lies. People are like, well, Paul, when he was writing the scriptures, he was in prison. And so he was probably looking at the Roman bodyguard, the Roman guards. Guys, you got to understand, the Roman bodyguards, like the Roman military, didn't just always walk around in their full armor for combat. Okay? Most guys, you know why? Because it's stinking hot and heavy. I was in the army, and what we did, we had what was called battle rattle. Okay? Every army since the history of everness has battle loadout. Okay? This is the potentially your armor, your primary combat tools, distance tools, shorthand tools, whatever they may be. Okay? It's what you take when you know I'm going to war today. Because there's some days, guys, you wake up and you know you are going to war. That day is kadosh for battle.
Yep.
You know it, you're going to do it, and that is your full-time job that day. It's not like, I'm dad today. I might milk some goats. I might just make some cheese. I might hang it. No,
again, it's the ghee. Think of the ghee. This is
knowing that I'm putting on the last bits of clothing that I may ever wear. In the United States military, we adopted a principle of uniformity, right? That there was complete conformity within our ranks so that everybody put on the same uniform so that no matter what, you were just going to the mess hall and eating a meal, you were also in the exact same clothing that you would wear to go die in, right? Literally to go die in.
It's the same principle we were taught.
Almost every single soldier, and the reason I wanted to get out of the reason I was thankful the Father ripped me out of the military was because I realized that I finally gotten a part of the special kill teams that I always wanted to be when I first got initiated into my covenants with death, and I finally got access to the ability of, wow, I can finally be on a part of a killer team where we can just go out and hunt the bad guys, right? And I was like, sweet, I can finally just go put ice picks in bad guys' eyes. I know that sounds crazy, but you know what? I liked that idea. I wanted murderers, rapists, pedophiles, the worst humans I could think of to suffer in anguish and die. I wanted that. You know, I had my reasons for that. So too did everybody else who was on part of the team. Everybody had difference. But you know what we all had? That same mark, the shark eyes he talked about. It's a real thing, guys. There's certain humans who, if you sift them enough, you find out that they have a murderer's desire in their heart. And they want revenge. They may want bloodlust. They might have that at such a dripping level that the military or masters who are good at recruiting go and find them and then bring them in. And then what they do is they impart to them that same knowledge, that same spirit to carry on what they've learned and to bring forth better fruit of it. Okay, so when you're in your full battle rattle, guys, we'd put on body armor. We had armor plates that we would put in as well, which were ceramic plates in our front and in our back. And then now we even had side plates and neck guards and loin guards. And then that was our shields, guys. You get this? This was like our shield. The United States military doesn't necessarily carry a shield as much. But back then, these guys did. When they were going to war, they picked up a shield, okay? This is the whole, like, my Spartan 300 shield that everybody's seen. All the iconic big shields that they see, they generally cover from your jawline, ear line potentially, a lot of times your jawline to your knee line. Okay, and that was when you went to war. You generally would take a spear and a shield and a sword and like small. This is like your like butter knife kind of stuff, right? Anyways, but people have always in their life been conditioned to think shield, your shield of faith, right? So like believers, when we read this stuff or we're trying to understand the scriptures, we think the shield of faith, it's this big, huge thing that we can take into combat. But it says here in Psalm 91, there's also another kind of shield, which is discussed, which is called a buckler. That's what this is, guys. This is, I'll just give you a little product. This is a cold steel medieval buckler. They're like $30. You can beat the snot out of this thing with basically anything that's out there, except for a bullet. We're going to use this to pattern small bucklers out of linen and sapphires to try to make bulletproof, awesome bucklers, because that's fantastic. And to try to teach you guys a lesson about why you need to carry a buckler every day. The buckler was your EDC shield, okay? Because you know what those same soldiers didn't generally do? Go around in full battle rattle, because it sucks. It's awful. It's miserable. It's hot. It's hard to eat lunch with a giant shield strapped to your what? I'll just put it on my back like I do in the video games. No, you won't. No, you won't. It's not like real life. You don't normally do this stuff when you want to climb a mountain or sit down and poop, because you got to do that too, guys. You ever pooped with a shield on your back? Try it and let me know how it goes. Okay. Bucklers are the in-between. Bucklers are something you could carry on your pants every single day. And check this out. Oh, I'll do it on this side. You could carry it on your person in your daily business. The sword of the scriptures, okay, it talks about is also a short sword. Machaira, right? It's basically like a bigger, well, it's more like this one. It's like a bigger version of this. Because something you could still carry on your person on a regular basis, that wasn't your giant go-to-war sword. It also wasn't a huge spear. Yeah. Because Yahweh's also a practical Elohim. He knows that we aren't necessarily every single day waking up knowing we're going to war. Right. But at the same time, in Psalm 91, do you want to track that down for us? Go ahead. Yeah. He's going to read from the sword of the covenant. Go ahead.
Well, in Psalm 91, verse 4, it says, He shall cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you shall trust. His truth shall be your shield and buckler. So, even we hear about in Ephesians 6, it talks about the shield of faith. Well, here it talks about the shield also being that of truth, but not only just being a shield, but also a buckler. So it's not just that ginormous shield that you were just talking about, but also that tiny little buckler. That little buckler is not just meant as a defensive, but also as an offensive, something that you can, jab at somebody with, and press forward in a line. It's meant also to protect your hand when you're swinging a sword. That hand's completely open, but now you can use that as a guard while you're swinging. And if somebody else's sword would hit that, it'd hit your buckler instead of your sword. That's what the truth is being equated to. So not only do we have in Ephesians 6 the shield of faith, this concept of faith, but it's also your shield is also the truth, and we also know that the word is called the sword of the spirit of the ruach, and it's called the truth. So your shield is also equated with your sword, which is the word, which allows you to actually be able to keep the rest of your armor on and intact. If you don't have any faith, which also faith is a gift, that's a very important concept to understand. Faith isn't just something people have. Something that's given to them, and I would even almost say it's something that's earned, and it could be like, okay, why do I deserve it? We're not the one who decides if you get the gift or not. We can be the one that can help dispose of that gift, and that's what we're here to try to do. We're here to help give you the gift of faith, because those who have more should be able to give. It says that those who are faithful with little will be faithful with much. Faithful with what to do what with? if you've looked at anything with their linen railroad and all that, if you have seen them from the ground up with their journey with coming to this, their whole heart has been about trying to strengthen and build the body up with the garments of, that the high priests wore, that the people back then wore, that will actually help benefit you. Their whole ministry with this is to help you feel not only the best that you can be, but also to just, again, set yourself apart more for the Creator than did you know that you could be set apart for Him just by what you're wearing? It's not just about not wearing skinny jeans or, crop tops or whatever. It could also just be about the fibers in your clothing. Those could actually help you with your walk with Him. And it sounds crazy, but it's the truth. Don't think that anything that you do in this life doesn't matter. And that's what we're here to talk about. Everything that you do matters. Every person that you come in contact with matters. Every word that you speak, you will be judged by. So, that's what we're here, talking all about. So, that buckler, not only is it here to defend you, that your truth, your faith, but it's also to help you move forward. Also to help you to, just as that short sword was able to be precisely stabbed into somebody, that truth is to be able to, divide between bone and marrow. It's to be very precise with how it attacks the soul, not in a way to destroy it, but a way to, just as it says, to remove the stone from the heart, to be able to get into the flesh, to
circumcise it. Exactly.
That's it. To reveal that which can actually, be malleable and mended. He says he's the potter, right? And we're the clay. We have to, if our hearts are stone, a potter can't mend with stone that well, but if it's been cracked open and revealed, now it's got flesh, now he can actually have something to work with. So, think of your buckler in a completely different light. That truth, this word that you are hopefully reading daily and being filled with, is your defense and also your offense, especially in the times that we're living in right now.
Yeah.
You really want to be defensive in the things that, like with masks or whatever, or, just going out in public and talking to people that, don't want to stand closer than 6 feet from you. They want to keep a lot farther than arm's length away from you. Learning how to combat really the demons that are working within them so that you can recruit them for the kingdom of heaven and show them that the only thing they need to fear is Yah.
Yeah.
So that they can actually fully walk into life.
Yeah.
We're to use this thing as an offensive tool, not to defend your life. And this is also what we're talking about here with the whole martial arts and everything. It teaches you to defend your life and to think of the other person as disposable almost.
That's it.
But that's not what the scriptures teach. The scriptures, Paul even talked about if he could give up his own salvation for someone else, he would. Mm-hmm. But he knew he couldn't. He knew that that's something that's not just disposable, but that's only given, again, like faith, from the Father. So, we're to teach that, even, and it might sound confusing with, how, we talk about knives and we talk about shields and bucklers and we talk about, you need to carry one of these. Regardless, you need to carry one of these every single day because this is a tool. You need to carry a knife every single day. This is a tool. It's not just used to kill somebody. This is used as a letter opener. This is used as something to cut open boxes with. This is your most used tool if you think about it. We grab for scissors and stuff all the time, but you don't always have scissors out, when you're at somebody else's, establishment or house or whatever. To have a knife on you, that's one of the best knives ever.
Spadaco Para 3.
I have one. It's amazing. I don't have it on me. I know. I'm ill prepared. I know. I'm giving you this talk, and I know, but I've got them all around me right now, so I'm okay.
I've got extra. I obviously brought extra.
Yes. I'm wearing different pants. They were in my other pants.
He's wearing his linen armor pants. Don't worry.
So I'm in my Shabbat clothes. So that's the time when I take a knife off at least. So
that's good, man. That's good. I did that too.
Before. Yeah, right.
Yeah. I took off the one I used to strap to my neck all the time. See, I used to wear knives strapped to my heart, literally 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. My wife used to reach over at night and put her hand on my chest, and there was always a razor sharp knife there in a sheath. Okay. But that was it. It was guarding my heart. Like that's what I had to get to a place where the Father could rip open the soil of my heart, guys. He wrenched it open. Go read my book. I'll put the chapter in particular where, you know what, my covenant with death, when I was 6 years old was when I first got into my covenants with death. Okay. He started with me there, the Reaper. Okay. But then you know what started happening is I left this list of things in my past: bodies, humans, souls. I went and hunted them, right? I became a hunter of souls. I tried to be mighty, and I thought the way to be mighty was to take things like this and bear them up and be able to rend open other people with them. And if that I could, by doing so, I would preserve life. By killing them, I thought I could preserve the innocence of others, right? And you know what I realized? When you have somebody scream at you, like when you kill a person in their own bed, you know, it's not totally self-defense, right? But if you knew with absolute certainty, beyond reasonable doubt, that the person you were sent after to execute had been doing the kinds of R-rated, X-rated, worst-case scenario horrible things systemically for years or decades of their life, you would hunt that person. I think a good number of you would think that's called a just kill. That's a whole other topic on philosophy. I studied philosophy for 4 years in college because I also wanted to wrestle with that question on killing. Is there such a thing as total war? Should there ever be a time where all the rules, all the laws, all the societal norms, all the ways that we've insulated, all the laws that we have been given that should be thrown away, should they be thrown away during certain times of experiences? And when you read the scriptures, you also run into these crazy situations like Ehud. He's a guy who makes a double-edged dagger based off of the length of his elbow to his fingertips. That's a good cubit length. He makes a dagger to conceal on his person, to sneak into the king of Moab's house, his palace, under a pretense, which just means like false grounds, under a lie. And then he says, I have a secret message for you, O king. Makes everybody get out of the room, and he murders him in his chamber. Okay, he executes him by shoving that dagger, that set-apart kadosh blade. He shoves it inside the guy and leaves it and then runs for his life. Well, I had to do that at one point in my life where I murdered a man in his bed and ran for my life out the door. And I heard the screams of the woman who woke up screaming murderer. And like those things stole my sleep. Those things stole my sleep so badly. They ate at my soul. They consumed me because I had a covenant with death who said the Reaper's payment, he'd give you this power, this ability, this might. He'd pour it on you, and that rage, that blind rage, like the guy who got addicted to killing, that Erik was doing his testing with. When you get addicted to them, the Reaper comes and he takes your sleep, and he takes your mind, he takes your sanity, to such an extent that I shot and stabbed myself multiple times and was bleeding to death on my parents' patio basement when the Reaper was done with me. And he came to harvest my soul. He came to harvest my soul because that was my covenant with him. You get me for eternity, but I get you for now. Okay? Well, when that covenant exchange came due, the angel of Yahweh stood between him and me and said, he is mine, you can't have him. And he is the only one who I ever saw rebuke death. Okay? Now, when you see that, I saw that with my eyes. I knew I wanted that power because I'd never been given that kind of power in a testimony at the church. I never saw that conversation from stage. I never heard that testimony unless I read the Bible. If I read the Bible, I read those testimonies. But if I went and stood in these chairs and watched another advertisement for a Christian yoga class go on the screen or whatever else,
right before your sermon.
Right before the sermon. I saw weak, impotent pastors my whole life. And so then when the military came along and said, we'll make you a hunter of men, sign me up for that class. I want to go be a mighty man for somebody out there. There's lots of guys 13 years old being recruited to go be a Gibborim.
Even younger.
You are talking about a girl who was in that class who was 10 years old. 10 years old. And you know what happens with a lot of those people? They figure out that this is far more dangerous of a tool than a firearm ever is.
Yeah.
Because you can condition your body to do far more with a knife or a sword than you can ever do with a gun. Because you know what? There's all these riots and all these people going on and breaking into cars and smashing people. And they're like, I'll just use my rifle. I'll just use my gun. And then you shoot 5 people and you paralyze a 4-year-old, right? Because, I didn't know my AR-15 could shoot through 4 car doors, right? There's a lot of serious problems, guys, when you get into the legality of carrying a sword, a modern day sword, a firearm. But you know what? You generally don't run this through anybody else accidentally, okay? I got addicted to that covenant with death. But you know what? Yahweh, he said he was the author of life. Go read Deuteronomy 30. Would you open to, let's just do it. Because I know a lot of times when I say that, a lot of people just have never opened the Bible. And that's, if you haven't opened a Bible, don't worry. I'm not trying to belittle you in any capacity.
We encourage you to.
I encourage you to do it. There's a lot of believers out there who've grown up their whole life in the church that never opened the front half of the Bible. But there's these chapters in there that are amazing, like this one.
Every one of them is amazing, but
they are. But I'll be honest. I have some favorites.
Oh yeah, we all do.
But like today, my daily bread this morning was Deuteronomy 30, Jeremiah 10, Isaiah 9.
Oh wow.
I was just all over the place. That's where I went to it today. But let's see. Oh, this is great. Okay. See, I have set before you this day life and good, death and evil. In that I command you this day to love Yahuwah Elohim, to walk in his ways and to guard his commandments and his statutes and his judgments, that you may live and multiply. And Yahuwah Elohim shall bless you in the land where you go to possess it. But if your heart turn away, so that you will not hear, but shall be drawn away and worship other Elohim, and serve them, I denounce unto you this day that you shall surely perish, that you shall not prolong your days upon the land, whether you pass over the Jordan to go and possess it. I call the heavens and the earth to record this day against you, that I have set before you this day life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore choose life, that both you and your seed may live, that you may love Yahuwah Elohim, and that you may obey his voice, that you may cleave unto him, for he is your life and the length of your days, that you may dwell in the land which Yahuwah swore unto your fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Yaakov, to give them. He is our life. That day when he did that exchange for me, he said, I take him and I'm going to offer him life. Yeah. No one had ever taught me about these covenants. Nobody ever showed me about the blessings and the curses. Not like this. Like this, the covenant here that I was taught, we took this symbol with the circle and the X right here. I don't know if you guys can see that. Not really. I'll roll in a clip. Circle and the X. I was trained that is the mark of a covenant with the mark of the beast. That's what I believed I had to bear because of my mark and my covenant with Cain and the doctrines of demons that I served. I thought that was my curse forever. I never thought I could multiply. I was cursed with physical challenges, things cut off and gouged out of me so that I could not reproduce, so that I could not bear life. And yet my daughter, when I conceived her, when she came forth out of my wife's womb, I knew his covenants of blessings for life, for the lengthening of my days were true, were valid, and I put everything I had into this, and I wanted to see if you are true, if Yahweh Elohim from the beginning to the end is the same yesterday, today, and forever, then I can trust him, then I can change camps, and I can commit to his covenant, and he will bless me, he will give me life. And my family, my daughters and I are witnesses to that forever. I don't have to sleep with a knife on my chest at any given time, because that's not what guards my heart. Yahweh is the one who guards my heart. Yahweh guards my home. He is the one who guards my family. And I've seen that transformation happen in me, but I've also seen it happening in other people who Yahweh has awakened. He's grabbed them from wherever they were and shaken them and said, you are mine, come back to me.
Yeah, totally. And it's amazing, even when you see in Deuteronomy that the first thing that he mentions is, and you go to serve other Elohim. And that's always what it comes back to. If what you are doing is not for Yah, then it's for another Elohim. And we have to understand that concept. So going back a little bit to my testimony,